Okay, this Koine lesson is from the verse John chapter 8, verse 7. It's about a word that only appears one time, but it certainly helps us understand the word sin. Sometimes it's translated sinless, and in the King James English version it says without sin. And in both cases, without sin or sinless, less shows the negative, like a minus sign or less than sign. So it shows it, but it doesn't show that in the word sin itself. And there's also here in this case the minus or less, the negations also in this word. So in this case we have two negations, but it's not brought out in this word sin as it is in the Koine. And this is a lesson where a woman was brought before Jesus. She was actually captured in a crime, a sin, a negation, if you will. They didn't care about justice or the law, obviously, but they did bring her to Jesus to try to tempt him or trap him and get him to cause him to say something against the law of Moses. Well, here's what it looks like in the common, easy to read. It says the, and then it's got the letter A here, and then the letter A again. So without this first A, you have A, which is negative, then Mart, M-A-R-T. So I'll just write it in English for you, because it's real easy if you've been looking at your letters in Greek. They're just so many of them are so much like. You can see the T there, that's easy. And the R, well, that's not so easy. But then there's A, and then M, that's obvious. And then, of course, A. So you see Mart there, like in martyr. It's real easy to remember because a martyr is obviously a witness who was negated, which is the ultimate negation, is to kill one. But then you have this letter A repeated here. And this letter here is just a letter N, like in our language when we put the indefinite article in front of a word that starts with a vowel, we say A-N, like in an opportunity, rather than a opportunity. So we have that N there just to make sure a consonant is between two vowels. So here we have A and A again. Well, how does this help us understand what really took place? Because Jesus didn't forgive the woman. It also says that while they had come forward to accuse her, that he began to scribble on the ground. And if you read the context, we know what he wrote on the ground. So let's look and see how we would know that and what would this really tell us. So it says the unnegated witness. This is an adjective. So Jesus was asking them, he didn't say that we can't have law, we can't have judgment, we can't have verdicts today because we could never have a jury. Where would you find sinless jurors? Where would we find sinless judges? And he didn't negate the law of Moses. People were being judged and prosecuted under the law of Moses during the life of Christ. And at no time did he say he came to destroy that law, rather to fulfill it. So what did he mean when he says sinless, as it's translated? There's only one negative brought out here. The other one's missing. You see, it isn't reflected in the letters S-I-N. Less shows it. Less shows one of these. Do you see? So we would say someone might translate this as sin and then say this is less. But how would you bring out that double negative? So what does it mean for the text? It means that Jesus asked the one among you that has not or is without or has not negated his negative testimony, because the negative testimony was against her. And what was against them, they negated it by not following the law. And those of you that know the law, any at all, you know that they broke, first of all, where was the man that was guilty? He was supposed to be judged, so they didn't follow that law. The husband was supposed to be involved and bring her before, let's say, the priesthood for adjudication. That wasn't done. If her family was involved or where they were to initiate this process. So you can now know how many things he wrote on the ground by studying the law. And what he actually said is he had to throw it out because they negated the negative testimony against her. And that's why the Bible in the common language makes so much sense, because I've even heard of parents who feel like they have no authority to correct or discipline a child because they may have done something similar or even worse in their lifetime. But that would be a strange way of parenting a child. My children certainly wouldn't try to get away with it. And as I was often struggling with this, I always wondered, well, is this just a sentimental text that we can just appeal to anytime we don't want to be accountable for our actions? That's not what it is. So when you study Koine, it brings it out. So I was trying to find the best way to translate it to show both negations. So I went ahead and put the negative particle un and then put negated witness to show the adjectival and to show that the noun being modified in this case would be the witness instead of unnegated witnessed one. I just went ahead and did it that way. But when you do that, or as it's in Koine, the good common language, you can see the double negative, and you can see that none of them had a right to prosecute her in a way that wasn't according to the law, because that's the problem they had. And that's why when they watched what he wrote on the ground and they read as he enumerated on the ground each law they had broken, they began to drop the stones and walk away, because they knew if they had proceeded in a manner that was not according to the law, they would be breaking the very law they came to try to tempt him to break or to negate. So they were caught between a rock and a hard place, no pun intended. They were trying to get Jesus to contradict the law of Moses, and in doing so, they were doing that. So Jesus did what we would call today, threw it out of court. But you can read this in the common text, this little dinky Textus Receptus. You can get one for just about $10. No one really wants them, and if you think very few people use your King James Version actually to study it, even fewer use this common text from which it was translated. So that's enough, but that's a very powerful lesson to show you how effective the Koine language in common expression can really take a text that has a lot of subjectivity to it and bring it into actual context and show us and demonstrate how they were actually negating testimony that was intended to negate her, and then they were mishandling it. Is what this negative here is saying. They were actually contradicting the very law and proceedings of Moses to try to capture Jesus and cause him to contradict the law of Moses. So study your Old Testament more and you'll know what he wrote on the ground. Study your Koine and you'll be driven and directed and guided by it to understand exactly what that lesson was about. So enjoy this lesson. It's powerful, brief, but very powerful.